City.
Actually, that's spot on.
It is spot on.
All the competition that try to compete.
Everything is spot on.
Hats off to the NFL. Somehow, in a pandemic type of year, we've gotten into only 3 games left in the NFL season. We didn't get here, but we're here. And SOS is talking about what we think the playoffs will look like going into what's coming up.
All right, so obviously we start at the top. You got to start with the chalk, right? Number 1 seed, I'm looking at the Kansas City Chiefs. I think they're going to continue to stay there. I don't think they'll lose another game this season. Then you got the Steelers, you got the division winners, right? The Steelers, I think they're going to continue to be able to win that division. You do have the Ravens, who have lost to the Steelers twice, so they're pretty much out of contention for the division. The Browns, but I think the Steelers will beat them when they play again, so they'll be all right. The Bills, I don't think Miami will be able to catch them. They do play the Bills again, but the Bills already beat them once. I think they'll be good, right? And then the Titans are currently winning the division, but they split with the Colts, so that's a toss-up depending on the next 3 games. But that's 5 playoff teams right there, right? The Steelers, the Chiefs, the Titans, and the Colts. So then it really comes down to the last 2, right? And then you got the Browns right now who are currently in that spot. I think the way we've seen the Browns play, and especially the way that Baker Mayfield played last night, I wasn't really sold on them making the playoffs. But what is the formula? Getting into the playoffs, running the ball. They may not have the number 1 rush offense, but whose rushing offense at this point scares you more than the Cleveland Browns with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb? And Nick Chubb, I just got to take a moment to sing his praises right now, right? We talk about the Zeke Elliott's and the Alvin Kamaras and the Christian McCaffreys, right? Because they're so versatile. But sometimes just being the best at one thing, like Derrick Henry is, I think Nick Chubb is in that mode as well. I mean, just the way that he runs the ball, finds his cuts, is patient behind his offensive line is crazy, right? It seems like every play he's running for 10 yards. But that's another story for another day. So I think that the Ravens, the Browns, Steelers, Chiefs, Bills, and Colts. Is that 7 or is that 6? I don't know. Those are my AFC playoff teams. And I think the Ravens get in. They're currently on the outside looking in, but I think they're hitting their stride right now. I think when you have a win like they did against the Browns last night, and shout out to the Browns for finding a way not to cover. You know what I'm saying? The Browns are still the Browns regardless of their record. But, I think that the Ravens will ultimately get in. They have I don't want to say a cake schedule the next 3 games, but they have some fairly easy games, and I think they're hitting on all cylinders. So those are my AFC playoff teams. Sorry if I only mentioned 6 teams, right? I'm still caught up on the old NFL. On the NFC side, right, you got your number 1s, right, which is currently the Packers, right? And then you got the Saints. I think the Packers and the Saints are pretty secure in their divisions, right? When you look at the NFC East, that's really the only one, and the NFC West, the Seahawks are going to win that division. When you look at although the Rams are playing really, really well, right? And I don't think people are talking about the Rams enough this year. When you look at the Rams, the way they've been able to play on offense, I think they're running the ball 60% of the time, probably 55 to 60. They're not putting Jared Goff in positions to where he has to win the game. That defense is flying. I love what they've done with Jalen Ramsey, letting him play all over the field. If they're playing a top receiver, they'll let him, just play man and take him out the game. But if not, they play a lot of zone. I think the Rams play more zone than almost any other team in the NFL. That's a little nugget for y'all. And then, of course, Aaron Donald, just the best defensive player in the NFL, right? Wreaking havoc up front, the resurgence of Leonard Floyd, and just the way they're calling that defense, they're flying. And then, of course, when you have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods on offense and that 3-headed monster at running back. Like I said, I don't think they can win the division, but Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the NFL, and they're going to make some noise in the playoffs. I think they're in. The only division that's up for grabs right now is 3 games. I think they've already played Baltimore, but I know they have a tough schedule. They play the Seahawks, I believe, this week, and then they have 2 more tough games. The Cowboys and the Giants probably have the easiest path, but the Cowboys would have to win all 3 games, and the Washington would have to lose all 3 games for them to get in. I don't think that's possible. So it's going to come down to the Giants or Washington. It's probably really going to come down to that Cowboys-Giants game, the last game of the season. And so I'm going to give the nod to Washington just because they just beat a great Steelers team and they've been playing so well. That defense is flying. Chase Young is not only looking like the defensive rookie of the year, but I mean, he's just looking like what we all thought Chase Young would be, honestly. And so I think they're a lock to make the playoffs. And then we look at the wild cards. The Cardinals were 6-2 and somehow have ended up 7-6. And if it wasn't for a Hail Mary, I mean, they might be under 500. But I think, they got that win against the Giants. I think they're going to be able to sneak in, right? And then when you look at the other two or other one, the new playoff format is kind of messing me up, right? as far as the wild card. But I think you look at the Rams, I think that the NFC West is going to have 3 teams make the playoffs. And then if you look at that last seed, I mean, I think, the Bears are still in contention, the Vikings. I think say that one more time. Oh, the Bucks. Oh, my bad. Forgot about the Buccaneers, man. There we go. You know what I'm saying? That's why we're a team, right? That's why we do this with other people. Right. And so, so I'm going to go to Rams, Cardinals, and then the Buccaneers. I think they just have too much talent to not make the playoffs, and that's going to leave the Vikings and the Bears on the outside looking.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the playoff picture, it's tough. I think that the NFC, you could see the NFC honestly stay exactly how it is. I mean, from 1 to 7 in this exact order. I don't know. The Rams have a tough schedule because they have to play the Seahawks and the Cardinals the last 2 games of the season. So I think that honestly that Week 16 matchup between the Seahawks and the Rams is your NFC West championship game. Whoever wins that game, I think will become the 3rd seed. And whoever loses that game, I think will be the 5th seed, especially if it's the Rams, because I think the Rams have the tiebreaker over the Buccaneers if they were to end with the same schedule. And I know that the Seahawks do because they would have a better conference record. So I think the Buccaneers are pretty much stuck at that 6th spot. I think that you'll see the Cardinals, they'll be the 7th seed. And then that come down with it because the Giants have to play the Browns and the Ravens while the Washington football team only has to play Seattle as far as quote unquote tough matchups, in my opinion. So let's get into the AFC, which I think is way more interesting. And I'm not going to go 1 through 7 like I just did with the NFC. I think there's an interesting scenario where you could have the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Browns, and the Colts, and even possibly the Titans, all in with 5 losses at the end of the year, being 11-5. Now, obviously, the Titans and the Colts, it will be whoever wins that division, and that's who you take one team out of that logjam. But there's really a the game. I could see the Dolphins winning out. I could also see them losing to the Bills, but I think that would be a really good game. I could see the Browns losing one more game, possibly to the Steelers. And then you look at the Colts and the Titans, Green Bay, and the Colts schedule right now escapes me. Oh, they play the Steelers as well. So I could see all of these teams ending at 11-5. And I think that would be a really interesting conundrum because that's way too deep in the tiebreakers that I care to research. I'd much rather just wait till week 17 is over and I know how the tiebreaker shook out. But it'd be really interesting, man. And we talking about bold predictions. My bold prediction is going to be that the Colts, I don't know if this is bold or not, but the Colts win the division. I think that they win the AFC South. I think that a lot of talk has been about the Titans, which is why I may put it into the bold folder. But yeah, I think that the Colts could legitimately win out. I think they could beat the Steelers. I think that's the only real tough game on their schedule, if my memory doesn't fail me. And I think that the Titans do lose to the Green Bay Packers, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be the 1 seed in the NFC. So I think that the Titans are in the wild card, and we could honestly see a round of the playoffs.
All right, so for me, kicking it off with the AFC, I mean, first of all, I feel like the playoff picture as it is now is kind of what it's going to be. AFC, the Chiefs, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, the Titans, the Browns, the Colts, and the Dolphins right now. My only discrepancies with that will be the Browns and Pittsburgh. I think the Browns, when it comes down to that last game of the season versus Steelers, they just might pull that win off and take that 2 spot. Who knows? I don't think the Browns are sleep on right now. You can look at Pittsburgh's experience and say, nah, Pittsburgh is not going to allow something like that to happen. But we never saw the Browns being in this position as it is. And so I think you have to sit back and say, yeah, that's possible. I think Darian made it with the Titans and the coach. I feel to run and ride the Titans at this juncture of the season. It's just the way that the season has gone for these two teams. Going to the NFC, I have the Packers, the Saints, the Rams, Washington, who could get robbed by the Giants right now. I mean, the NFC East is still wide open, and so we don't know what's going to be what. I don't look for Dallas to come back and try to do anything there, or Philadelphia for that matter. Next, I have the Seahawks and then the Cardinals. I think that NFC West though could get sketchy, but hey, we got this left, and so we'll see what goes on there.
Yeah, I think that, when you look at the AFC, right, the AFC is more so where you can see some movement, and that's as far as just the seeding and the wild card, because you have teams that, like I said, the Browns can still, who was my preseason pick. I got to shout that out. Shout out Spot on Sports. My preseason pick to win the AFC South, they're looking really good. When you look at that last playoff spot, right now the Ravens are on the outside looking in. But if you look at the Dolphins' next three, the Dolphins have been the surprise team of the year, right? Last year they were just tanking for Tua, and now they're 8-5 and firmly in if the season ends today, they will be in the playoffs. When you look at their next three games, though, they play the Patriots, they play the Raiders, and they play the Bills. And the Dolphins are such a wild card team that they could either win all three of those games or lose all three of those games. But ultimately, I'm just going to ride with the Ravens, right, and Lamar Jackson, what they were able to do last year and the momentum they have off of last night's win, compared with the fact that their schedule is pretty favorable over the next three games. Like I said, the Dolphins could easily lose to the Patriots. Regardless of how you feel about Cam, that's still the conglomerate and the juggernaut that Bill Belichick has built up in New England, right? The Raiders haven't been too impressive this year. It's crazy because it's like 1 week they'll beat the Chiefs, and then the next week they'll look horrible. You never know what you're going to get from them, but I think they could beat the Dolphins. And then obviously, I sung the Bills' praises on the last segment, but, they beat the Dolphins earlier in the year and they played the last game of the season. I think that's another game that they could easily win. So I'm going to say that the Ravens sneak in somehow. I don't know if they take out the Browns or the Dolphins. That's going to depend on how the next three games play out. But I do think Lamar and Justin Tucker hook them. Shout out UT, gets in the playoffs.
Yes, sir. Definitely some different possibilities that can happen this year when it comes to the playoffs. I'm really looking forward to these last three games, and we'll see what happens. Y'all tell us what y'all think in the comment section. Tell us where you think things pan out. And also, if you enjoyed any part, please hit the like button and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
We thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to check out more shows here on this YouTube page, such as SOS Discussions or My Point Exactly. And most of all,
keep watching Spot on Sports.
It's a new wave of sports that's sweeping the nation. We're not just accurate, spot on.